Hey, it's Lemon. Welcome to the Backlogs. A few years ago, God, has it been that long already? I played a little game called Saltborn Sanctuary. This game had exactly what I wanted. Dark and mysterious visuals, deep and fascinating lore that could either be ignored completely or rabbit-holed for weeks, depending on your preference, tight mechanics in combat, and Dark Souls adjacent gameplay. Needless to say, this game was my comfort food for months, and is one of the primary reasons this channel exists today. And while I've since put the game down after playing it every single way I could think of, I'll always look back on it fondly. And with the prequel now a reality, and potentially coming to a larger audience soon, hint hint, nudge nudge, there was never a reason to really dive back in. But that changes today, because thanks to the effort of Zephyr, Saltborn Sanctuary has received a massive update on Steam, simply called Saltborn Sanctuary Enhanced. This update is officially supported by Ska Studios, and while it doesn't add any massive changes, it most certainly makes some important ones. So, to make sure I understood the gravity of what's going on behind the scenes, I held a quick interview with Zephyr himself to get his point of view, which I'll probably be sprinkling in throughout the video. Just ignore that. Look, there's a lot to cover, okay? So, let's dive right into it. What exactly got changed in the new update? Well, a little bit of everything. Math got changed around, stats got revamped, enemies got adjusted, glitches got fixed, weapons and items got added, the list goes on and on. I'll do my best to cover everything I think you'd like to know, but I already know that I won't be able to hit everything. There's a lot to cover. So, in the interest of covering all the bases, Zephyr has kindly produced a spreadsheet for your mathematical enjoyment. Link in the description. This spreadsheet is probably still a work in progress, but it should have most of the mathematical changes documented for those of you who are numerically inclined. I'll summarize it for the rest of us, but if you really want to dive into the nitty-gritty, there you go. And, as a preemptive strike to make sure I'm not answering comment questions for the rest of time eternal, if there's a question I failed to answer in the video, or that isn't covered by the spreadsheet, Zephyr recommends you go to the Ska Studios Discord to ask your question there, which I'll link in the description below as well. Now then, let's look at this spreadsheet. Whew, God, what is this? I didn't sign up for this! Okay, that's enough of that. While I know there are some of you out there who would literally listen to me read through an encyclopedia, we're not going to cover all these number changes. We'd be here all day. What I will do is summarize what's changed in each category and leave you to discover the finer details for yourselves. So, let's start with weapons. First off, my beloveds, fists and daggers. Fists are a bit more viable, as they now have a riposte. Rip and tear until it is done. And daggers got a nice little buff as well.
There's this weird guy on YouTube. He made a special request, and I ran it against James, and James liked it. Daggers actually do quadruple damage on riposte.
Because if you're not kickflipping and parrying the world with your dagger, what are you doing? Whips got a pretty hefty boost as well. Not only was their damage upped, but they also have a new critical hit mechanic. Essentially, if you can hit your target with the tip of your weapon, you'll do extra damage. Zephyr also added a hitbox behind your character as well, which comes into play a bit more than you'd think. It's a nice touch. Wands got a damage buff, staves got nerfed a bit, great weapons in general got nerfed across the board, bows got a pretty good boost in damage, as did crossbows, while pistols got nerfed down some. As for the rest of the weapons, swords, maces, axes, spears, halberds, and reapers, it's kind of all over the board, and depends on a weapon-by-weapon basis. Now, don't panic. I know you're worried about— I said don't panic! I know you're worried about some of the changes. And if you're looking at the spreadsheet, some of those numbers look scary. But I promise, this is literally the best and most balanced this game has ever felt. Unofficial mods included. And here's why. Turns out, Zephyr has altered the way scaling works. There's a lot of math involved, but the only thing you need to know is he's done some programming magic on the back end. And now all the stats scale properly, and as expected, when it comes to weapons that scale with 2 or 3 stats. Which means that pretty much every weapon in the game now feels viable, including the edge cases and endgame weapons that never saw much use. Looking at you, Leviathan.
None of the weapons require magic user or prayers anymore. This is huge. They still require the stat though, so because of how the tree is organized, you're still going to have to go over there eventually to get your damage. But you don't need prayer 1 to pick it up and swing it. And I've done runs with Kiramoa in Enhanced to Balanced, specifically the Kiramoa. And I'm telling you, that thing is still an S tier weapon. And one of the reasons for that is I actually gave it a new flag, extra reach. So you're probably familiar with the Pale Charm. Please go play with the Kiramoa and the Pale Charm through the Red Hall cages, because you can reach across air gaps between platforms and hit things, and it's amazing.
Think of it like, I don't know, Monster Hunter. every weapon type is viable. Every weapon is capable of dishing out massive damage when used properly. And while there's always going to be a meta for players that like to optimize, this update makes it so that you won't immediately find yourself using the Jaws of Death Golden Wine combo for the 75th time in a row. If there was ever a weapon that seemed cool to you, but just didn't do enough damage to be worth it, try it again. Chances are, it's been given new life. Moving on, let's talk about shields. Shields have gotten a pretty heavy revamp, and definitely for the better. First off, they've been reorganized to come in 3 flavors: round shields, heater shields, and tower shields. Round shields are lighter and better for parrying, but have less defense. Heater shields are your jack of all trades, and the tower shields are heavy, have a bashing attack, and have a lot of defense and poise. I know that sounds like what it already was, but trust me when I say that everything just makes a bit more sense now.
A lot of things have been changed in weight, and shields are no exception. Shields are actually maybe one of the more extreme exceptions, or the more extreme changes, I should say. So your round shields, I don't think there's a round shield more than 10. And what was previously a great shield or a tower shield, the cockroach shield, if you remember that one, this is now a round shield, meaning that it can parry. It's no longer a tower shield that can bash. Round shields are meant to be kind of literally what their name implies, but it's also kind of their shape. They are lighter shields that do everything. They're all rounders. That's not a dad joke. That's a real thing. That's just a real comment.
Shield defenses have also been fine-tuned a bit, again, for the better, and a couple of shields have been given new abilities. For example, the Boeotian Great Shield now gives a 10% damage boost, while the Umbral Aegis now gives undersight. So that's pretty neat. As far as armors go, there's been a few nice changes there as well. Heavy armors are now a bit lighter across the board, which means that you don't have to invest 50 points into endurance just to mid-roll with them anymore. Also, a couple new special abilities have been added to armors, like the Assassin's Gauntlets getting a +3 to dexterity, or the Overlord's chest piece giving a torch effect, because of course it would. Moving right along, let's talk about charms. Charms all work pretty much the same way they used to, but now work properly. If you weren't aware, there were a few weapons that just didn't mesh well with certain charms, which meant you'd be attaching a charm to a weapon and wouldn't be getting the proper effect. Zephyr's gone through all of that and tidied it up, so now you can combine the extra reach charm with your greatsword and hit enemies from across the room, just like nature intended. Personally, my favorite change is how Zephyr altered the leech charms. You now regain 1% of your health with every hit, rather than just a single point, which means these charms are now super useful throughout the game. Not only that, but this effect works this way across the board, which means if you've got an armor piece, shield, or ring that regenerates your health or mana, you can now see a significant difference in how quickly you get back that resource. Paladin builds rejoice. Continuing on, let's talk about rings. There's a couple minor changes here and there, but the big thing to focus on is how rings that previously didn't work now work as intended, and rings that were left out due to time crunch are now in the game. The Band of the Humble, the Stone Ring, and the Twin Metal Ring. Can't forget the Twin Metal Ring. All of these are now in the game somewhere. Also, for those of you out there who are looking to honor a certain goddess, there's apparently been a new ring added to the game. A ring that may or may not boost alchemical consumables, like light vessels, granados, and firepots. As far as enemies and bosses go, they should all feel a bit better to fight now. Defense values have been adjusted to make the game more balanced, and a couple of small adjustments to animations or mechanics have been added as well. For example, Ember Skulls now have a small wind-up animation, which should help players predict their rush attacks a bit better. Bosses like the Witch of the Lake and Coveted will no longer fly out of their arena boundaries, and the Architect's danger bubbles can no longer overlap, and are spaced out in such a way that skilled players will be able to dodge through them if needed. Karstraw got an HP boost, which means you'll actually see Phase 2 now, and Murdiella Maul now drops gold, which makes her a bit more worth your while. Oh, and you'll all be happy to know that Tony's AI has been turned down a bit. He still warps around, but now he can't do it ad infinitum.
This was actually approved as a bug fix. The AI of the teleporting skeleton, Angsty Bones. His AI is a little more predictable. If he teleports 3 times in a row, he is forced to attack next.
And here's the thing, we've only just scratched the surface. There's so many things to cover, and we'd be here all day if I tried to cover them all and explain how big the impact and implications of each of them is. Things like consumable buffs using your entire damage instead of just your base damage, certain healing items working a bit better, new game cycles being more balanced in regards to health, gold, and salt drops, vendor inventories expanding and changing, a new weapon or two like the lump hammer and iron arrows, elemental ammo being rebalanced to actually do proper damage now, more upgrade materials being placed earlier in the game to help you with your build, more items in general being placed around the map, skill tree skills taking less black pearls to unlock, gray pearls being farmable so you can now redo your entire build if you want, NPC statues now dropping from enemies, the Kismet ring now actually finds items and isn't complete ass, elemental weapons now being really good at doing elemental damage, new menu options like removing screen shake or hiding your helmet, and again, that's just the surface. There's so much to talk about, and we could literally make an entire series diving into the weeds about the individual numbers and changes. But we're not going to, because in all honesty, we don't need to. Instead, I'm going to leave you all with some final thoughts. This update, it's good. It's very, very good. If you're a new player, there's literally never been a better time to pick up Sultan Sanctuary. Don't worry about any of the nonsense I've been talking about for the last few minutes. Just pick up the game and play it how you want. Be curious. Try anything that speaks to you, and never be afraid to try something new. I promise, if you've any interest at all in this kind of game, you'll have a good time. And to my salty veterans who are looking forward to another playthrough, I've only got a single suggestion. Put down the spreadsheet, treat the game like you don't know it backwards and forwards, and just play. Try a new weapon, try a new build, try a new everything, and don't worry about the numbers. If you're staring at all the red on the screen, wondering why all your favorite meta builds are now worse and why this, that, and the other thing were messed with, you're doing yourself a disservice. Numerically, it looks wrong. After all, how could they do this to our boy? Our sweet baby boy! But I promise, if the numbers were lowered in one area, they were raised in another. And rather than trying to math it all out and figure out how to fix it and optimize it and yada yada yada, just play. There's so much going on, so many tweaks and small changes, and I don't know how Zephyr did it, but when it all comes together, it just works.
The whole system is a little bit different, and so this tiny 10% here and that 15% there, you're gonna feel it if you're really paying attention. But if you're not paying attention, or if you're a brand new player and you jump into Enhanced, it should just feel good. And that's my goal. You shouldn't need the spreadsheets to go, oh, hey, this weapon is good, bad, whatever. You should be able to pick it up and snack things with it. And a lot of these are really early game buffs. You pick up a quality weapon, a one-handed sword, you start as the knight, something like that. You're gonna notice right away that you're doing crazy amounts of damage. That things that previously just kind of suck to deal with, like, they don't. And the reason for that is because quality weapons actually finally work. I didn't nerf the enemies. I didn't really buff the weapons. I didn't change sword damage. And so, like, Branding Iron, instead of doing like 101, does like 98.5s. And I know that people are like, why would you change that? It matters. It does. It's all about progression curves and things like that, which I really care about in games personally. But I'll tell you, the 98 damage Branding Iron feels 3 times stronger than the 101 damage Branding Iron. Because you're not waiting till you hit 50 magic to hit that. You're not having to hit that in New Game Plus for other weapons that are not S tier magic and stuff like that. The enhanced version may not be perfect. That's okay. I did soften a ton of sharp corners.
So there you go. Sultan Sanctuary Enhanced. A great update to a great game. As a quick reminder, Zephyr's spreadsheet is down below in the description, and if there's anything I missed or didn't cover in enough detail, the Ska Studios Discord link is down below as well. And for those of you wondering if I'll be updating my wiki, the answer is a tentative yes. I can't make promises, since my schedule seems to be busier than ever these days, but between Salt 1's enhanced version, and Sultan Sacrifice getting a free DLC and a wider release, hint hint nudge nudge, we're definitely going to be in need of a proper wiki for both. I've got a few plans in that regard, but I'm going to keep those hush-hush for now. Better to undersell and overperform, yeah? In any case, that's all I've got. Take care of yourselves, be good to one another, and I'll see you all again soon.